What time is it? Okay, we have some fabulous live music later on, but right now, here's the kind I prefer.
What's up? This is your boy Styles here with WestCoastStyles.com on our YouTube channel, the OGWCR. Thank you for tuning in today. And we've got a special guest in the house. First of all, we've got Shad Reed, who's going to be co-hosting today. But our special guest is a man that I admire. He's like a mentor to me. He's an OG, triple OG in this hip hop journalism game. And we've got Billy Johnson Jr. in the house.
Got me over here blood blushing a couple of days before Christmas. I appreciate you, fellas. Yeah, Tim, man. We've been hitting these streets for a long time. It's been good, rubbing shoulders, rubbing elbows out there with you, man. I see the work you're doing, and I love the new venture, man. Congratulations. I'm honored to be here. And Shad, it's a pleasure to meet you too, brother.
Likewise, sir. Likewise. I'm a fan as well.
Crazy.
Yeah, me and you go back a long ways. I remember the first time, I've been following you for a long time, but I remember the first time I met you was at the Lil Wayne show for MTV. We were both covering that for our outlets. And I got to finally meet you after all these years of following you. And that was such an honor. We just kicked back and watched Wayne perform and watch,
who's there was some I was gonna mention that as the time that we met in person, which was cool. And then there was a special guest that was there that I think was unannounced before he blew up as a solo artist. Who was it?
Titty Boy. It was 2 Chainz.
It was 2 Chainz, Titty Boy. Yeah. I was gonna say that. I remember seeing him. I was like, oh, yo, this is dope. It was dope to see him there. So
let me tell you something. They said that they were going to have a special guest in the house, and I was all excited. And they announced Titty Boy, and I had never heard of him to that point. And I was like, what the Titty Boy? What kind of hell?
Right.
And then months later, he started blowing up as 2 Chainz.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's that dude. I was like.
What's really funny about that is I remember him in DTP and, the guy in the group called Titty Boy. And I was thinking, from a marketing perspective, that's probably going to pose some limitations on this brother. So when he reinvented himself, wow, that really worked. So
that's good.
So it was a pleasure meeting. Mm-hmm.
Let's hop into this interview here.
Yes.
Let's go back a little bit before you started. Before you became a hip hop journalist, how did you first get into the game? Like, what was your introduction to it?
Well, it was kind of in my veins and a bit in that my dad was a musician. So he started playing the saxophone when I was born in 1969. And that had been a lifelong dream of his. He had just come back from Vietnam and this, that, and other. And so he was playing, playing the saxophone. So he always had a band. One of his bands was called, listen to the names of these bands. One was called Grits and Biscuits. Another one was called Liquid Heat. So definitely a funk bands. But there was so much music in the house. So much music. So one of my pastimes, my brother and I'm the oldest, we would just, we had a 3-bedroom house in Inglewood. 1 bedroom was the music room. And so 3 kids had to share a room. So my dad could have his music room and we would thumb through the albums, right? Just as a little kid. And that's where I started to get a sense of like, what was a good single? Because I would pick an album based on how the cover looked and I would put it on the record player and I would just skip from track to track to find the song that I loved. And so that was really like that was kind of like the beginning of it. And I started college as a computer science major. The math and science was a little ridiculous, so, but I love to write. I wasn't an A student in writing, but I was good at telling stories. My grammar was horrible. But my teachers would pick me to read my essays to the class. And they would like it. I had a candid nature to how I told stories. And I noticed that was happening in college as well. So at the end of my first year of college, I looked at my transcripts and saw like, okay, anything that had to do with writing and speech, I had seemed to do well in. So I took some time to think about it and I ended up, making a transition to change my major to communications. Yeah. So it actually was a beautiful thing. So at the beginning of my third year of college, I changed my major officially. I got a job. I started doing hosting a radio show on the campus station. I went to Cal State San Bernardino, so KSSB. My name was the Quiet Storm. And also my mentor in the Black Student Union, her parents owned a community newspaper out in San Bernardino called the Riverside Black Voice News, and I got an internship. So like January 1990, I changed my major. I got a job on the college radio station, started working for the community newspaper, and I was on fire, man. Like I had a plan, and I just went after it hard. And one other thing, sorry, you guys have to, I just start going. But
no, you're fine.
No, that's
one of the coolest things that happened though is that I grew up in Inglewood. When I was 16 in 1986, we moved to San Bernardino, to Rialto out there. And ironically, so that was a hard shift because when we were leaving LA, I was happy to move to this bigger house. I was going to get my own bedroom. We had a swimming pool and all this stuff. But I tell you, once we got on that 10 freeway and we hit Pomona and K-Day started fading out, and I came to the realization that we were not going to be able to have access to K-Day anymore. I was like, oh man, I was really like having anxiety over that. But there was a pretty cool music thing happening out there. There's some college radio out there at University of Redlands, on KUOR and KUCR and at UC Riverside, and they really did a great job playing all the stuff that I would have heard on K-Day. So, but in that I was introduced to JJ Fad, right? Because they're from that area. So it was really interesting growing up in Inglewood to now I'm in this new area. Then I'm hearing about these girls that had this song that was, popping locally. And then I was able to see like this, then I started to see them. They got signed by Ruthless Records. They're in all these magazines. They got nominated for a Grammy. It was really cool because I saw that happening, from the point that I moved out to that community. And so this was influential for me because as I was a really big fan of music, I wanted to meet them because I was right there, like in the same little city of Rialto. Yeah. And so on the back of their Supersonic album was the address for the fan club address. And it was a street address that was a street right by the high school that I recognized. So at the point that I saw that, I was like, man, this is too close. There, nothing is going to stop me from meeting them. And I would write them letters until the mother of one of the members, MCJB, she ended up becoming my Aunt Virgie. She called me. And let me start helping, and eventually write the fan club newsletter. So in doing that at the point that had happened a little bit while I was going through this transition of figuring out what I was going to do for my career. And I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I was getting the behind the scenes stories. Virgie would play me all the VHS tapes because JJ Fad was on tour, with everyone, Hammer and NWA and Fresh Prince. And so they had these VHS tapes, that they recorded their personal performances. And I would just go over there with Aunt Virgie, filling out fan club newsletter envelopes and watching these behind the scenes videos. And it seemed really cool. So that was kind of like, that was my first taste of it. And I was like, man, if I could get a job where I could be immersed in music, I could write about music and get access to this stuff, that would be amazing. And it turned out to be, a great decision.
Wow, that's cool, man. Yeah. That's so dope. Shad, you wanted to throw in some questions there, please?
Sure, absolutely. Like we said earlier, Billy, thanks so much for joining us. It's an honor to speak with you. And I became a fan of yours when I read your essay that you wrote about the Neptunes. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Ooh. You're talking about the source?
Yep.
I have that's so crazy because I know we're going to talk about West Coast stuff, but that was a story that I was hoping I would have an opportunity to talk about.
Oh, please do.
Because there's some behind the scenes stuff to that story. And I love the Neptunes and Pharrell. And I've interviewed, Pharrell a number of times where, we're not friends or anything. I mean, it's been several years, but, like if he saw me, he would remember me kind of thing. But when they sent me to interview him, to interview the Neptunes for the Source at that time. I had, interviewed them before, and I was working for Launch, which was a online digital magazine. It was a website, and we had a CD-ROM, and so me doing my hustle. So I was there. This is probably bad for me to say this, but so the Source sent me there to do this interview with the Neptunes. For Launch, I would write news articles every day, and I would have to get sound bites. And the sound bites we would send to radio stations, because it was a part of it was a syndicated radio news service. So I would repurpose everything to much. So if I'm going to do one interview, I would try to get the most out of it. So while I was there, I was pulling out my microphone, my radio mic, and I was setting it up. And it was just a simple icebreaker thing. And honestly, icebreakers have been the most important aspect of an interview for me, because, you establish a connection and a rapport before you get to business, So while I was pulling out my microphone and setting it up and everything, getting ready to start the interview, I said, "Hey, good to see you guys." I said, "Yeah, so you guys met in junior high school, right?" And then Pharrell just snapped on me just like that. And he was like, "Why would you ask me something like that? Like, everyone knows that story. The Source has already interviewed us a number of times. They've already written that story. Like, you're so unprepared for your interview." And he just went on, and he said, what did he say? He just said, "No one wants to know that." And I was literally sitting there just like, dang, this is crazy. Because the interview hadn't even started. I was just setting up my microphone and everything. And so I was really pissed off, of course. But then, I'm professional, so I got through the interview, but I said, I'm going to get his ass back. So my way was, when I wrote the article, you guys know, as writers, you want to come up with a good introduction for your article.
Sure.
And that's the hardest part for me. So whenever at the point that that anecdote that I'm going to use for the intro comes to mind, I just get a sense of peace, and so I was like, I'm going to get his ass, right? So my introduction to the article was something to the effect of, when asking Pharrell about being from Virginia is like asking Mike Tyson why he bit Evander Holyfield's ear, and then I just quoted him saying, "This is BS. Why are you asking about Virginia?" I quoted exactly what he said. And so then I wrote the rest of the article. I was very happy with the article, the source, everything was fine. I'm trying to remember who. Eric Parker was my editor for that story, right? Mm-hmm. So now months later, I love the story. So months later, I was at some junket in Atlanta, and I saw Eric Parker, and he said, "Billy, did you see that your article, they quoted your article in XXL?" And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, "You got to see it," and I was like, what is this about? So XXL had this column called Negro Please. Have you ever seen it?
So, I remember that.
So Negro Please, for anyone who may not know, Negro Please is all about clowning artists, like finding a quote that an artist made, a quote from an artist that they think is ridiculous. And then they just literally just put the quote there, like, don't everyone agree that this is a dumb quote. And so the quote said something to the effect of it just quoted it. Yeah, Pharrell, the source, and it quoted it. And so when I saw it, I got so much vindication out of that. I was just like, yes, and I just thought it was so funny. Okay, the story's not over. So now maybe a couple of weeks later, I'm at launch, and I would, over the years, I've written bios and stuff for artists, for record labels, bios on artists. And so my friend who was a publicist, Mel Miranda, he called me. He was representing Pharrell, and he's like, "Billy, we need a journalist to do an interview with Pharrell that we're going to use to send the press and stuff like that." He said, would you be interested in doing this? We'll bring him to the launch office." And I was like, I was thinking like, well, yeah, but I was thinking like, this might be some drama, because this XXL article literally had just came out. So I said, dude, come on, let's do it. So he brings Pharrell to the office, and as Pharrell, we sit down, like nothing connects. Like Pharrell does not remember me or anything. And so we're sitting down there doing the interview. And then right at the beginning of the interview, he said, I'm sorry, I'm in a bad mood today. And he said, there's this magazine called XXL, and they have this column called Negro Please. And what they do is like they find a quote from an artist and then he just stopped and looked up and said, I said that to you. And I was literally like,
wow.
Oh man, I just laughed, but it was like a great full circle moment for me.
Sure.
And I just laughed, and he said, well, man, could you please contact them and explain to them what I really meant? And it was taken out of context. And I mean, I was just literally like, it was weird. But anyhow, I love that story. Nothing like that has ever happened to me, but it was
cool.
weird.
He was cool to you after that, though?
He was cool. Yeah. He was cool. I mean, he didn't take it. I mean, I'm still a nice guy at the end of the day. So whatever, but see, that was me getting back, like literally quoting him, it wasn't like, some type of sabotage or anything, but
that's good. He was cool about it. He could have been an ass. A lot of people can be assholes, But we've gone forward a little bit too much, and let's rewind back because I'm interested to know how you got from being, writing handily the JJ Fad fan mail, to actually being a hip hop journalist.
Yeah. So while I was doing which was really cool when I was writing the newsletter, I would. So the LA Times, the entertainment section there, Entertainment Weekly. So this was actually rap pages had come out. The Source, I still really wasn't seeing the Source yet. We had Rap Sheet, we had Word Up, and all these magazines like that.
I remember Word Up, yeah.
So I was reading all of them, and so as I was doing the newsletter, I would incorporate some interviews, with the girls. I asked them like when they did We're All in the Same Gang, or when they're doing their second album, not just the Fad and stuff like that. So I was kind of getting some of that experience. So at the point that I changed my major and I started working at the community newspaper, they paid me to be the production assistant. And I said I wanted to write, and they're like, sure, but you're paid to do the production assistant. So after you do the production assistant stuff, if you want to write, go for it. And they really just opened up the doors for me to do whatever I wanted to do journalistically. And I said, well, I want to get into entertainment writing. And so they just gave me the platform to do it. And it was really a huge blessing. So, it was a perfect transition for what I was doing with the JJ Fad newsletter. And so I started writing things for the community newspaper because it was a well-established, respected newspaper. I want to shout out to the Brown family for them just taking me in. And they were already receiving like music and CDs and press releases from record labels and everything. So what it allowed me to do was just kind of like be in the office and go like, oh, wow. I see the press release and it had a contact number. And so I literally just started picking up the phone, calling up record labels, asking for copies of music. Then once I figured out the formula, like, okay, just look on the back of a CD and find out what record label's on, call New York, call what would he call for information back in the day? 411. Whatever it was that you had to do to call. So I would call Atlanta to get the number for LaFace to see if I can interview TLC. You know what I mean? And I literally was just figuring out, I didn't even know what I was doing, but I just figured out, okay, a couple people sent press releases. So there's a formula. So I'm going to apply this formula to other artists that, I may not have a connection with. And in doing that, and this is while I was still in college, I just started meeting a lot of people at record companies. And what was really cool is that because it was such a developing genre, a lot of the other people, we're all young, we're all in college, the same age. And so it was just like an instant connection. I feel like today is a lot harder in terms of the gatekeeper thing. Everyone's like got the status in class and, who they want to let in and stuff like that. And it wasn't like that. It was like I was reporting for a small newspaper. Just not, the circulation wasn't that big and it wasn't in LA. It was 60 miles outside of LA. But I did, put effort into what I did. I was very professional with how I contacted them, and people just started giving me access, sending me music. I started doing interviews. My first professional interview for the newspaper was from the Hammer camp, Angie B. You know, she sang the chorus Juicy Got You Crazy, and a lot of the Hammer hits. And it really started to flourish where I was doing interviews, 1 or 2 interviews every week. So by the time I graduated from college, I had already met like majority of all the artist representatives, publicists for like all the big artists. I didn't get access to all of them, but like, there was some like Dallas Austin, had Rowdy Records, and Y'all So Crazy, I think it was a group. I interviewed him for that. There's so many people, Fat Joe and Common, and all these people, like when they first came out, I had an opportunity to interview them for the Black Voice. So that was really my start. So once that started flowing, they used to tease me at the paper because they saw what my vision was, and that my goal was to get a job at one of the rap magazines. So, by the Source, so I said it's either going to be the Source or Rap Pages or Rap Sheet or Word Up or Vibe. I had the first test issue of Vibe, that had Tretch on the cover. And I was just on that path. I was really, really, really focused. So I had these 5 or 6 people. When my articles would come out at the Black Voice newspaper, I would go down to Kinko's. I spent all my check at Kinko's. I would make copies of all of my articles. I would cut them up and glue them and make them look just like they would in a press kit. Because back in the day, they would send you a press kit of all the coverage of artists. So I would take my articles and make them look like that. And then I made my own letterhead, my own labels, and I would write these letters to these different magazines, the Source, Rap Pages, Rap Sheets, and I would say like, hey, I'm an editor. I'm the entertainment editor of the Black Voice News. I've interviewed these people. Look at my writing samples. I'm also going to interview SWV and, whoever, the Tribe Called Quest and these people. Would you be interested?
Wow.
Too Short. Would you be interested, in an article on them? So I was very professional about it. And, I mean, most of the people did not give me work, but, some people did. And then that would just be something else. When those articles would come out, I'd be at the newsstand, the grocery store. I would go straight down to Kinko's, make my copies. I was mailing that stuff out, I just really enjoyed it. I think I made a good impression, clearly on some people. They gave me a shot, gave me an opportunity. And so, if I meet someone today and they say, oh, I want to be a writer, and they don't even write a blog, I mean, that's free. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand, like, how are you going to do it? If you don't have the self-motivation just to create, to find a way to create an opportunity for yourself. So, and people are really nice to me. Yeah. A lot of people gave me
because, you and I have like parallel, entrances into the game, except mine was with audio. I would, before I started, I started with West Coast Writers. I'd go out to all the record stores, all the local ones, and find all the latest mixtapes, tracks, whatever that had come out, and I'd drop them on different rap forums. That's how I got recognized. But I had to go out there, like you had to go out and make copies of your articles and send them out. I had to go out and find music, and that's how you have to hustle. Anybody that's waiting for it to come to you, it's not going to happen. You got to hustle, and you got to make your sacrifices, and that's dope, man. Shad, did you want to ask him some of your questions?
Oh, for sure. I know that we're kind of taking a couple different directions with this conversations, but that's great. So don't worry about it all. So one of the things that you covered that I thought was very interesting, or was probably very interesting to cover from a journalist standpoint, was your stuff you did with Entertainment Weekly and covering Biggie and Tupac. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so that was just Entertainment Weekly was a publication I was always very interested in reporting for. So after working at the Black Voice News, I started writing for Word Up. So I started freelance for Rap Sheet. I became managing editor of Rap Sheet. After 2 years at Rap Sheet around 1996, I thought like, okay, I felt like I was preaching to the choir. That time was pretty crazy in hip hop with a lot of the violence. And, I would talk about that to some extent in my work. And I just wanted to see a difference. And then I also hated what was happening in terms of how mainstream media covered hip hop. I thought like they would always just, they didn't understand it, and they would always just, take the most negative perspective. So I was thinking, it's probably a good time for me to figure out how I can expand, my audience, so that I could help, tell this story better, what's happening in hip hop. So there was a panel discussion, and I would go to these kind of things. There was a bunch of editors from different mainstream entertainment outlets, Entertainment Weekly, Us Weekly, and et cetera, people. And they had like some organization put on this discussion. And then I went. Ironically, the West Coast Bureau Chief for Entertainment Weekly was really dynamic. It was him in particular that I identified with the most in terms of his philosophies and everything. So right after the panel, I walked up to him, introduced myself, gave him my business card. Ironically, one of my freelancers from Rap Sheet also wrote for him. That was Craig Barboza. And he said, hey, Craig Barboza, does he write for you guys too? I said, yeah. So we just had that connection like that, right? I gave him my card. 6 months later, this man calls me. I never pitched him as I had intended. 6 months later, he called and said, do you remember meeting me? And I was thinking like, dang, this is, this is Cable Newhouse from hell yeah, And he said, well, Tupac died. And I was like, okay. Then I kind of felt, then it like my cheer kind of got like, okay, and he said, well, I was like, okay, yes. And he said, well, we need some help covering this. And just by him saying that, I just said, okay, well, what are you looking for? He said, what do you mean? I said, if you're looking for someone to say he lived by the sword and died by the sword, I'm not interested. And he said, okay, well, what should we do? I said, well, this is a very complicated matter here. Like, you need to talk to people who understand hip hop and understand the things that kind of led up to this situation. It's very important you put all this in context. And he said, okay, would you be willing to, do you think you can get some interviews? Can you interview some artists and some music execs, who can explain, like how the music industry is going to be impacted by this? I was like, of course. So I sent him all the stuff we had done in Rap Sheet, some previous issues where there are articles with artists talking about East Coast, West Coast stuff. And he just let me go at it. And so I got interviews with Ice Cube and Yo-Yo and Big John Platt, huge publishing superstar, and and someone else that I'm forgetting about. I got a bunch of them, but those four they actually used in their article. So I did interviews. I submitted my transcripts of my interviews, and they pulled the quotes that they liked, that thought would be a good fit. And when I saw that cover story on Entertainment Weekly, East Coast, West Coast rivalry, a 5,000 word cover story, and the last quote in the article was a quote that I got from Ice Cube. Not only was my quote the last quote in the article, but the quote from Ice Cube said something to the effect that like hip hop didn't kill Tupac, a bullet did. And that just gave me chills, because it made me feel like that was my intention for wanting to contribute to the mainstream. Like, it's to help them tell these stories, put it in the right perspective, and leave people with some food for thought, something more than these hooligans, are always fighting and stuff. And that just gave me chills. And I thought, like, you know what? Whoa, I want to do more of this. And so had not followed up with him when Biggie passed. 6 months later, he called me. It wasn't as big of a story, but I was able to contribute to that story. And then for 4 years, he used me as a contributing reporter. I would mostly go do cover events, parties, and get quotes and stuff like that from artists. But it was really was a great opportunity, and I just felt honored to be a part of that.
That's wonderful. 2 other publications you mentioned previously were The Source and Vibe, and I know you've contributed to both of them. Can you kind of compare and contrast working between those two? Because as a reader, you definitely kind of got a different feel when you read each magazine.
Yeah, something that's funny you asked that question, because of course there is a difference. And so for me, I've always had a full-time job, as a journalist. So whether it was the Rap Sheet or when I went to Launch and I worked there for 18 years, from that point till it came Yahoo Music. So anyhow, I was always like just going. So when it came to freelancing, what I learned is, it's hard, I love writing, but writing doesn't come naturally to me. And it was so, but I take direction well.
Mhm.
So in terms of how the publications were different, I was never really focused on that. It was more so to my editor, what do you want? You know, what do you, this is what I want to contribute to the story. But they would always be very explicit in telling me what they wanted. And so I was just in that mission of like, okay, I'm writing this story at night because I'm, working a full-time job during the day, and I'm just trying to hit the points that they told me to. So I wasn't necessary. It probably would have been easier for me, if I was just able to just shift like, okay, this is the source mode, this is the vibe mode. But it was just like, what does my editor want? And really, for the way I feel, it was like every editor was different, like what does each individual editor. So with the editing process and make these changes and this, that, and other, I just made myself like available to do whatever they wanted me to do to get the story where they wanted it to. I did do more writing for the source. It spanned a longer time. And there was like a wave from like maybe 1998 until early 2000s, and then there was like a little break, and then a couple of years later I came back and wrote for them for another couple of years. But I thought it was great because the source in particular, they gave me more stuff and they gave me cooler stuff. I wrote big features for them, like on Black Eyed Peas and Jurassic 5, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg. One time Nate Dogg, I went and met him at the studio, and we rode in his limousine, around LA, and he ran out of gas, and all. It was pretty amazing, pretty. I don't know. I just really felt very fortunate. And it was always an honor, when there was at one point, I'm sorry, I'm doing these shout outs intentionally as a way to thank, different people who've helped me, in my career. But there was a point at the source when after Benzino left, there was kind of a shift. Yeah. And two of my editors called me, at the same time, which was really crazy. They're like, Billy, we like to have you back to do some stuff. And that first article that they gave me, was Fahim, and it was Ryan Ford. They both called me together, and I was just, really blown away by that. But what was really cool is that like that was when the hyphy movement was taking place, and so like it was Too Short. Like we want to do something with Too Short, and so I got to hang out with him, and I'd interviewed Too Short a lot over the years, and so that was really cool. So I just felt really honored, like when to get an assignment in general, because I pitched magazines for so long. I mean, it was 8 years before I ever got something to write for Vibe, and it was once I got to Rap Sheet, it was like a conflict of interest, but still, and it was still 6 or 7 years before I was ever able to write for the source. So I didn't take it lightly that someone was giving me an opportunity. So I just wanted to do the best job, and I was just very, very proud, to have these opportunities.
Were you there for the Benzino?
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Tim.
Were you there for the Benzino years?
No. I didn't do any freelance writing for them during that. So maybe, yeah.
I'm gonna say that that's when the source was down the drain, man.
Yeah. It was, because it was after, because when Ryan and Fahim called me, they're just like, okay, there's some changes. They're like, yeah, so Benzino's not, it's different, but we want to have you back on board to do some stuff. And that was definitely, I was very honored to do that. They gave me a lot of big features. Snoop Dogg, I went back, Snoop Dogg after he left Death Row, I did that interview for them, and he was going in on Suge like crazy. Yeah, so that was excellent. And I don't know, I really feel blessed that like I started off in computer science, and then I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and came this other path. It was pretty awesome.
Do you ever have just as a fan of music as well, kind of differentiating the artist from the art? Like I know you did that stuff about Michael Jackson, and and then I know you had that podcast with parents, the parent talking about music. Do you kind of wear different hats, or are you it or?
Yeah, that's funny. No one's ever asked me about the podcast. My wife and I did a podcast, 14 episodes. I thought it was going to blow up, but I did drop the ball. I want to go back to it. because early on in my career, when I would tell people that I was a hip hop editor, especially in the 90s, people would go like, I remember I had a day job for something in healthcare, and I was at a thing, and I was telling someone, yeah, well, I always write for this. I always also write for this newspaper, and I write about hip hop. And a lady said, oh, and she said, you know what? Digital Underground has a song, and the guy says, I'm the one that put the satin on your panties, And she said, is he talking about what I think he's talking about, And so I would be in these situations all the time where people outside of hip hop were asking me these questions, and I was thinking parents don't understand, like they really need someone to kind of interpret to them what's going on. And then also some stuff is not appropriate. I have 18-year-old twins now. So I've had that phase too. So the whole intention of the podcast was take a tongue-in-cheek approach to explaining that kind of thing. And so while I love all this stuff, I have to put it in context. So like we joked about Fetty Wap and Trap Queen. So I would go like, so this guy, he's got a business, and he loves this girl and he wants to, bring her in the business. My wife is like, dude, he sells drugs, but I just wanted to have like a fun, lighthearted way to kind of educate parents, and it was all genres. It wasn't just
Sure.
But anyhow, I want to bring it back. But yeah, I definitely differentiate between all that. I mean, word up, the first trip that I went on for as a music journalist in 1993, they sent me to Oakland on a plane. I thought I was big time. I got on to send me to a plane, a flight from LA to Oakland to interview Too Short for Menace to Society, right? And one of the things that struck me the most was listening to his music and then meeting him in person and seeing how professional and polite and articulate he was, compared to the persona, of Shorty the Pimp. So, so that I started paying attention to that. And I also feel like that was one of the big disconnects with hip hop and mainstream, because people couldn't see the artists outside of their personas.
Yeah.
And so I actually love that. And I would always, in my interviews, really try to get to that humanistic side of the artist when I'm talking to them, So yeah, I thought that was very important. I really wanted to capture that so people could read whatever article that I'd written and just feel like they can connect to them on a more personal level.
Mm-hmm. At Rap Pages, which obviously had a lot to do with the Rap Olympics, you saw firsthand the emergence of Eminem. What was your thoughts about him when you first heard him? And going back to the 90s, saw him. He was definitely something different at the time.
Yeah, that was it was Rap Sheet. Rap Sheet had an annual conference working towards a unified hip hop nation, which is pretty amazing. A big part of that had always been the MC battles and DJ battles. Shout out to publisher Daryl James. So this one particular year, the guy Dorsey Fuller, who was over promotions, who used to coordinate the battles, was no longer there. And so in a planning meeting, we were talking about we said, well, should we have the MC battle and the DJ battles this year, since the promotions team is different? And there was some discussion about not having it. And I was like, oh man, I'm in an editorial, I'm working on panels and stuff like that for the conference, but like we need to have the MC battle, DJ battle. Like there's no way we can't do it. So they're like, well, who's going to do it? I said, well, let me, I know Dorsey had worked with, rap with Wendy Day, so can I call her and see if she wants to still be involved? So I called her and she said, yeah, in fact, this year we want to do the Rap Olympics. We want to bring the Rap Olympics to LA. And so it was really, I just love that I was, a part of that. And so she gave me the names of, all the people who were coming. Rap Sheet bought the ticket. So I actually, purchased the tickets with the Rap Sheet card and purchased Eminem's plane ticket, to come here for the Rap Olympics. A good friend of mine, Soren Baker, who wrote for Rap Sheet, we were standing right next to each other, in that MC battle, and Eminem was killing it. I remember he said a lyric like, I know I'm going to lose because I'm white. And I just remember the jaws dropping and when he lost, we were like, I worked for the publication. I was like, that's some bull. Like he should have won.
Wow.
And so to hear that would happen at, because of that event and him being there, Sway and Tech were there. They invited him to his show. An intern from Interscope was there. He shared his demo, and, a year later, he was being released on Interscope Aftermath. I was like, whoa, that was pretty amazing. But yeah, we had a column where we would take demos to different record labels and let them hear the demos and critique it. But yeah, after him performing at the Rap Olympics at the Rap Sheet conference, I took, the very next time, the next month when I went out to do that, I went to Priority Records and played Casualty, the demo. He gave it a good review. I was looking for that issue. But yeah, so I felt it was very cool, just to be a part of that and just have an opportunity. And what I want to say, I want to be careful, but I felt like during that time, there was a lot more excitement about discovering new artists. It wasn't only about who are the big artists who already have a big social media following and lots of streams. It was like, it was taking the time to go through all these tapes, and listen to them and see who I really liked and who I thought would have a shot. Who I thought deserved a shot. And you would cover the big artists, but you were always looking for the emerging artists that you thought would be next. And that was a huge part of it. And I feel like there's not enough of that today,
That's my philosophy. That's my philosophy for the site now,
Yeah.
We look for the new artists, but we also cover the legends and the veterans.
Yeah.
But man, we're looking for the new guys out there, and I'm constantly going through audio and listening to people and saying, "Hey, let's give this person a shot," And that's kind of like what we did back at West Coast Riders and when the internet was new, it was like that,
Right.
The site were like that, and then it became kind of like, no, let's not cover this person because they don't have enough, streams or enough, they're not large enough or whatever, and as a publicist now, I know what that's all about.
Yeah, I definitely see that now, because after I left Yahoo in 2016, I wanted to use the same skills, but do utilize them in a different way, and I wasn't sure exactly what that would be, but I got so many opportunities to independently represent artists, help them find media coverage, become a publicist, media consultant. I like to call myself what is my strategist. I like to call myself chief media strategist. But but I'm definitely in communication with all these outlets, pitching them things and learning what they are or are not interested in and what things resonate with them, the most and stuff. And these are factors. These are key factors, like how well things are doing, the streaming and all that stuff. So it's definitely hard. I have a lot of independent clients.
Do you?
Let me ask you something.
Oh, sorry, Styles. Go ahead, man.
Go ahead.
Oh,
no, I was going to ask you. Let's go to your favorite and worst interviews of all time.
Ooh, favorite.
Pick one. Pick your worst.
Okay. So I would probably say, I want to say Yo-Yo because I love her to death. She would be second, but I'm gonna say 50 Cent. Because the times I've interviewed him, he's like the most honest person. And regardless of what it is, I'm not the salacious, interviewer, but he would just tell you whatever, I'm trying to think of one thing in particular that he shared that was kind of shocking. Dang, I don't know why I'm loose, but I mean, I interviewed him like that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I interviewed him at the Super Bowl in Chicago when he and Floyd were really going at it, and he gave me some good quotes for Yahoo homepage, which is really good. It was very introspective. Like he had this song called it was it a G Unit record, but he had this song where he was talking to heroin. And I'm forgetting the name of the song. And in the song, heroin. I'm sorry, say that again.
Baltimore Love thing off the mask.
Yeah. Yes. So he was on that song. Heroin is talking to him, and heroin is saying, "Why are you trying to leave me and this, that, and the other. And it's a really poignant, grabbing song. So I asked him, I said, you know what, when I was listening to the song, I was actually kind of felt sympathetic for Heroin because of the way you told the story. And I asked him what made him explain it that way. And he explained that how when he was a teenager, he had gotten in trouble for something drug related, and they sent him to a juvenile, they sent him to a drug program, even though he wasn't using drugs. And what he learned in that program, inspired that. And, I just thought he was just always just very, very candid. And I appreciated that. And I would say just for the worst interview, I would say Kanye West cussed me out, but I instead I'm going to say when Vibe had me cover the Vibe Awards, and it was the year Dr. Dre was being honored, and then there was a scuffle backstage with Dr. Dre. Something happened. There was all this commotion, and then my editor walked up to me and says, "Billy, so you know what happened with Dre, right? And Suge Knight is here." And I'm looking at them like, okay, okay, it's like, and I'm like, okay, what? I know they're not going to say what I think they're going to say next. And they're like, so do you want to ask Suge what happened to Dr. I mean, I was literally like, I said, can you please just give me a minute. Please give me a minute. So I pace and I'm playing this out in my head. And I remember the time Entertainment Weekly sent me to cover someplace, and I didn't, at the Source Awards, and I didn't include in my notes that DJ Quick was involved in the fight. And so they called another journalist who was there and asked them to report on it. And that pissed me off. So I was like, okay, I took the job to be here tonight. You know what I mean? Like, there's someone else here who would do it if I don't do it. It's my job to do it. Yeah. It's man up, So I went back to my editor. I said, okay, swallowed hard. I was like, okay, let me go. Let me interview Suge about this incident. And so I walked up to him and I said, how you doing, Suge? I'm Billy. I'm from, reporting for Vibe. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? He said, no, sit down. And I just said, so everyone knows you and Dre have beef. And he said, I don't have beef with nobody. And I said, okay. And I said, well, there was an incident here tonight and with Dr. Dre, and people are saying you have something to do with it. Is there any truth to that? And he's like, no. And honestly, I don't remember what, I don't remember what else we said in that conversation. I know I got through that part. I mean, it was probably all of 2 minutes. It seemed like an eternity, and they actually didn't end up using that. But man, I just had never been so scared. Never been so scared.
Wow. Why did Kanye cut you out?
I don't know why. I don't know, honestly, because even after I submitted it, I just wanted the whole thing to go away. I didn't even want it to come out, So when I noticed they didn't use it, like I don't know. Serena Kim, I have to ask you what happened. Why didn't I don't know. I do not know. I mean, I don't know. My assumption was probably because, it was a great event otherwise. And like, why taint the legacy of the event with that is part of their wrap up. I don't know. Yeah. I do not know. Whew.
Wow. Amazing. Let's talk about Yahoo for a second.
Yeah.
How was your time working at Yahoo? Were they pretty were they harder to work with than the rap mags?
It was different. Actually, but there was a lot of dynamics. So when I started there in 1998, I was very fortunate. There was a team, Dave DiMartino, who's the person who hired me. Then there's Lindsay Parker, who was our managing editor. I was one of the senior editors. And then there are a couple other people who kind of stayed there, left, and came back. But Dave D, Lindsay, and they were there before I got there, but I worked with them the whole time I was there for 18 years. But while working for them, as our radio stations and video stations started to do well, I started working in those areas as well. And so I had other people that I would report to. But working with Dave D and Lindsay Incredible. So I've been away for 5 years, and Lindsay still every year when they do like the end of the year, what were your favorite albums of the year? She still includes me in that. So I think I just got her text today. So definitely really good people. I made a lot of really good friends. I can't name everyone, but it was hard in that I wanted to go to a mainstream media outlet to cover, to make sure to represent for us, right? To make sure that hip hop was covered right. And I was fortunate. Dave DiMartino used to work for Cream magazine, so like he is a serious OG in terms of his respect. And he hired me. I had a lot of good recommendations. And he trusted me, we had lots of in-depth conversation about, the music and stuff like that. And he let me do my thing. And I really appreciated that. I never had any back and forth with him about anything at all. And so I thought that was pretty phenomenal. When it started getting tricky was with in the latter, maybe the last 8 years or so that I worked there, as we started more aggressively featuring our content on yahoo.com. That meant that I had to, while I could write whatever I wanted to write for Yahoo Music, if I wanted my story on yahoo.com, I had to, to collaborate with the yahoo.com editors, because yahoo.com is not a music site. Yahoo.com is not an entertainment site. It's a search engine, and it's a place people go to check their emails. So, we need to be aware of, we want to retain people. We want to keep them around, for the advertiser's sake. So when people come to yahoo.com, they can't just put, anything that Billy Johnson thinks is cool, on yahoo.com. It has to be something. So there are some creativity that came into play to get some stuff that I wanted on yahoo.com. And that frustrated me a lot. And one example was like when I interviewed Snoop when he was, becoming a Rastafarian. And so I knew for like a month and a half or 2 months that this was going to happen. And I was just pitching, and they were just not interested at all that he was becoming a Rastafarian. And I thought it was like a very significant, transition in hip hop that he was going to do it. And so as we got close, I saw the documentary, and I had all these angles, and they were just like, nope. And so one day they said to me, you know what? You're about to interview Snoop at South by Southwest. Here's what we want. Ask him about going to high school with Cameron Diaz. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to jump out of the window, like you're not serious, and they're like, if you want it on yahoo.com, that's what you need to ask them. And I was like, damn, I'm going to look like an asshole. Like I had interviewed him for Too Hype magazine, like in 1994, before Doggy Style came out. And so anyhow, I went to South by Southwest. I had 7 minutes to interview Snoop. So I asked every question that I wanted to ask about him becoming a Rastafarian. And then my last question was very sheepishly like, so can you tell me about you going to high school with Cameron Diaz? And so then he gave me whatever quote he gave me. So as I was writing my article, I found a quote from Cameron Diaz recalling going to school with Snoop, and she, thank God, Cameron Diaz, she said in her quote, and he used to have these little ponytails, right? So that is on yahoo.com. Snoop Dogg remembers going to high school with Cameron Diaz. I tell my story, and then I quote Cameron Diaz saying, and he used to have these little ponytails, and I go, and now he's got dreadlocks because he's a Rastafarian.
Wow.
So a lot of times it was like that. It was like, okay, I'm gonna get it in there. You hate the what?
I hate those handcuffs, man. I hate those handcuffs that you put on you. That it's like that's one thing I've always struggled with is in working with, and I've had some good editors. Chuck Creek was probably been my favorite editor to work for, but I've had some other editors, man, where those handcuffs were like, damn it, take this off of me. I want to create something interesting, and I don't, I remember one had me ask an artist about skinny jeans, and I was like, I don't want to ask them about no damn skinny jeans, man. It's like, don't you do this to me, So I understand completely, man. I totally understand.
It's and I'm sorry I'm so long-winded. I just want to briefly say, This is for people out there who are, interested in journalism and stuff. This is unfortunately in some instances a part of the experience. For Entertainment Weekly, like they were sending me to, I started off doing very significant things for them. And then this party coverage just became, like ask these tongue in cheek questions. There wasn't substantive at all. It was cute and funny, and they used it and they paid me, pretty good, to go do that stuff. But, I mean, just at a certain point, it's like, look, I paid my dues, like there's other stuff, that's, I feel really strongly about that. Like there's a lot of important things that need to be said. Don't get me wrong. I can tell you everything that's going on with Cardi B and Offset and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, I want my contribution, and it's not that everything had to be super serious and about Chuck D, but I at least need a nice balance, in there.
Well, you probably saw firsthand kind of the evolution of clickbait working at Yahoo. I'd imagine.
Oh yeah. Oh man. And we got so much data that I just rebelled against it at a certain point, because we would get reports, throughout the day, your story, if it was on yahoo.com, it was only going to stay there for so long. If the click-through rate is not, high enough and stuff like that. And I don't believe in ambulance chasing and even the chasing trending topics today and stuff like that. So I just got to a point where like there are points where I was getting like averaging 8 or 10 million views a month on my articles. My wow. Kanye West, Taylor Swift article the night that he took the award from her at the VMAs. I know alone that one article got over 11 million views. And I remember looking and seeing that there was a TV show like NCIS or something at the time had got that same number of views. And I got 40,000 comments, on that article, which was crazy. But I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I just felt enslaved to that. And I just said, I have to go back to my Rap Sheet days, to my Black Voice News days, where it's my gut. I mean, first time I heard Bone Thugs and Harmony or Common or SWV or Fat Joe or whatever, it didn't have anything to do with that, and I got behind it and, was a career supporter of these artists based on, initially my gut. And that's the best part. It's like having a gut reaction and then seeing that it that it ends up being successful, at the end of the day. So, yeah.
So
I'm good. Anything else that you wanted to ask him? I'm good.
Transitioning real quick over to so media and repertoire. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And all this stuff is huge. Like all the posts, Yahoo, any opportunity like this, I find it huge, right? Because now I have like my own company. I'm independent, and so to get this love, it means so much. But when it was over at Yahoo in 2016, my one prayer was, God, I'm not sure what's next. Just let me do what just comes natural, and I don't want to be in a box. I don't want to be in a music box. I like these skills. I think I have developed good skills. I want to utilize them, but just in a different way. Some people even advised me like, well, go work for TMZ and I was like, no, that's not what I'm interested in doing. And so, so with me, taking people asking me, this guy named Tim Trudeau, really huge in the Christian hip hop world, was a good friend of mine. I covered, some artists that he represented at Yahoo, and he took me to this festival in Tampa called Flavor Fest. And there he said, Billy, there's all these artists that really could use your advice on your experience on how they could get more mainstream coverage. And so there's a guy named Derek Minor in Cannon, Derek Minor, and he has his label, Reflection Music Group, he and Doc Watson, and they hired me, for a year to do PR for their label. And I really loved the process, and it started a snowball from there. And so 5 years later, I've done it. I don't know how many clients I've had in the 5 years, but no lie, like 98% of them have all been refers. Like I haven't really had the opportunity to pursue clients because people keep referring people to me who I like, and I take it on. And so I have Kevin Powell, who's an author who's written 14 books. People were first introduced to him on The Real World. He's run for Congress twice. He just released a book. I have, domestic violence intervention program. I do social media for, I have Little Haiti, who's on Q Global Entertainment at BMG, who's a hip hop artist out of Brooklyn, New York. I mean, I'm really fortunate, with the clients that I have, and I really love the experience. Everything I've learned as a journalist, from what journalists like and what they don't like, how often to contact them, what you should send them, what you shouldn't send them, etc., has really helped me, one, explain the process to my clients, but also, to get coverage for them. So it's actually, I didn't think I would like the job because it's a hard job. But I actually really do love the process. And of course, when big things happen, Little Haiti last week, he had a coat drive. He gave away some coats to fans, and I had a News 12 in Brooklyn come out and cover it. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. And he wrote on his page when he posted it, like, wow, I made it on the news without having to kill someone or to rob. And I mean, I think it was tongue in cheek, but I think there was some seriousness to it, right? Because a lot of times you see like an independent hip hop artist, on the news is because something terrible happened. Sure. So yeah, I actually really love the process, so I'm just looking forward to 2021, just continuing to grow this thing and take it to the next level. So I'm just grateful for all the people like you guys who are supporting me.
Oh, well, we appreciate the kind words.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an honor having you here, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I hope that people out there learn something, And one thing I hope that they really get is that you have to hustle if you want to get into business. You have to work. You have to make some sacrifices. Like, you may not have to go to Kinko's anymore, but you definitely have to get your ass on the computer and do something.
It's so much easier to send links than going to Kinko's.
For making those to Kinko's too. The journey says a lot about it too.
Wow.
I kind of saw that in my transition and growth as a writer too. I saw kind of that shift from physically going places and spending money to just being able to send links, go to YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, congratulations to you as well. Yeah, it's been a blessing. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I feel very blessed. Yeah.
Great. Billy, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful night. And I just really appreciate you coming on and being our guest today.
Man, it's an honor. Can I share my handles?
Please do.
Okay. Thank you. So personally, thank you. Personally, is at Billy Johnson Jr. across all platforms. And for my company, it's at Media Repertoire. So MEDIAREPERTOIRE. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Billy. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Happy holidays.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
What time is it? Okay, we have some fabulous live music later on, but right now, here's the kind I prefer.